In the dim glow of my study, surrounded by the macabre relics of my imagination, I never thought my tales of terror would leap from the page into the stark, unforgiving light of reality. Yet, as I sit here, the weight of my typewriter heavier than ever, I find myself ensnared in a nightmare far more chilling than any story I've ever penned. It began with the first murder, a scene grotesquely reminiscent of The Butcher of Blythe Hall, my debut novel that catapulted me from obscurity into the limelight of horror literature. The police found the victim in an abandoned mansion, meticulously arranged just as I had described in my book. I remember the cold shiver that ran down my spine as I read the news, an eerie sense of déjà vu enveloping me. Then came the second murder, mirroring the ghastly fate of the protagonist in Whispers from the Depths. This time, the victim was found by the sea, their body entangled in a net, eyes wide open, staring into the void as if they had seen the abyss itself. The local authorities were baffled, but I saw the pattern. Someone was using my stories as a blueprint for murder. With each new crime, the connection to my work became undeniable. The media dubbed the killer the Narrator, a moniker that sent a chill through the literary community and a dagger through my heart. My fans, once a source of admiration and support, now looked at me with suspicion and fear. The question on everyone's lips was the same. Was I somehow complicit, or worse, the inspiration behind this madness? The police were no help. They questioned me, of course, probing into my life with a scrutiny that felt like a violation. They delved into my past, my inspirations, even my nightmares, searching for a clue that might lead them to the narrator. But I was as much in the dark as they were. The only link between me and the killer was the twisted interpretation of my stories. I realised I couldn't wait for the next chapter to be written by someone else. I had to confront this horror head-on. So I turned to my own work, poring over each line, each character, each plot twist, searching for something I might have missed, a clue inadvertently penned. Nights blurred into days, my study became my cell, and the lines on the page began to dance before my eyes. It was in the midst of this madness, as I revisited the shadow at the end of the hall, that I found it. A pattern, a method to the narrator's madness hidden within my own words. Each murder corresponded not just to the plot of my stories, but to the order in which I had written them. The realization was a gut punch. It meant that the next target, the next scene in this macabre reenactment, would be based on the final verse, my latest work. A story I had concluded with the author's demise at the hands of his own creation. Panic set in. I was no detective, no hero in one of my tales who could face down the monster with nothing but his wits. I was just a writer, a creator of nightmares that had somehow spilled over into the waking world. But I knew then that I had to act, to step into the shoes of my protagonists and face the horror head-on. I fortified my home, set up cameras, and waited. The isolation was maddening, every creak and whisper of the wind a potential harbinger of my doom. But it was in this solitude, this waiting for the inevitable, that I found the courage I never knew I had. The courage not of a hero, but of someone fighting for their life. Then, one stormy night, as the wind howled like the chorus of the damned, it happened. The power cut, plunging my home into darkness, and I heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone else in the house. My heart raced, my breath caught in my throat, but I forced myself to move, to confront my nightmare. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a kitchen knife, I crept through my own home like a stranger. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but shadows and the familiar detritus of my daily life, until I reached the study. There, in the halo of my flashlight, stood the narrator. Not a spectre from beyond or a monster of fang and claw, but a man. A fan, he claimed, twisted by his own demons and my words into something unrecognizable. He spoke of admiration, of seeing himself in my tales of darkness and despair, of wanting to make me proud. The confrontation was nothing like the climactic battles in my stories. There was no struggle, no exchange of clever words or dramatic revelations, just the cold, paralyzing fear of death and the desperate primal will to survive. In the end, It was that will that saved me. I fought, not like the heroes in my stories, but like a man cornered by his own creations. When the police arrived, drawn by the noise and the chaos, they found me standing over the body of the narrator, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. The nightmare was over, but the shadow of those events lingers. Now, as I sit down to write once more, I find myself hesitating. The typewriter that was once my ally feels like a stranger, its keys like the teeth of some beast waiting to bite. I wonder if the stories I have yet to tell will be tainted by the horror I've lived, or if perhaps, in facing my own nightmare, I've found a deeper well of darkness to draw from. But one thing is certain: I will never again underestimate the power of the stories we tell, nor the shadows they can cast in the minds of those who consume them. For in the end, we are all authors of our own horrors, and sometimes the pen can be far mightier and far more dangerous than the sword.